I'm standing in one of Skyrim's jails just looking around and wondering, does this place actually feel like a punishment? I mean, it should, it's jail after all, but does it really? And what about the others? So that's what we're doing today. We're visiting every jail in Skyrim and looking at the details. How comfortable is the cell? How much space do you get? Is there a decent bed? What about food? How easy is to escape? How many guards are actually watching? Basically, does this place feel like a real punishment? Or just a spot to take a break for a while? Let's find out. I'm starting with Winterhold because the jail here can be really surprising. And since we're going for the full Skyrim jail experience, well, there is really only one way to get in. So here I am, trapped in a cage. Not exactly the warm cozy cell you might expect. All around me is ice, and there's a Frostatronach instead of a guard, as if the cold and tiny cage weren't bad enough. Besides my cage, there are 2 more underground and 2 more up on the ceiling. Oh, and did I mention there are skeletons in some of those cages? Makes me wonder what happened to those poor guys. Probably the same thing that'll happen to me if I'm not careful. I'm stuck in a cage, in a cave, on an island. So yeah, if you're here, don't count on anyone bringing you food. I think the cold's the real killer here. With all this ice around, hypothermia is probably gonna get you first. But look at that! I still have all my gear, not like in other jails. So at least there's a chance to escape. But if you didn't grab anything useful before getting locked up, well, I don't have good news for you. And if you're playing survival mode or the Frostfall mode, good luck even thinking about escaping. The cold is brutal and you're stuck on an island. Swimming to the mainland is definitely not an option. Oh, and let's not forget about all those Frostatronachs wandering around the cave. I guess Winterhold can't afford a normal jail. There aren't enough people around to pay taxes for it. But honestly, it's pretty brilliant way to punish someone. Survive this and I bet you'd think twice before committing another crime. Now, let's check out the jail in Falkreath. It has 2 cells. The one I'm in is pretty spacious, but we can see 2 bedrolls, so it's clearly shared space. The bedrolls might not be the most comfortable, but at least there's some food here. Mainly bread, but I also found some nuts and a salt pile. I also noticed a broom, which could mean prisoners have some daily chores to do. The other cell is pretty strange. It's full of water, but when you look up, you realize it's actually a well. The top is open, so snow and rain will fall right onto your head. People can also drop trash in there, which is just lovely. Standing in the water must be cold and depressing. There is a small space where you can stand without getting wet, and it seems like the only place to sleep that makes sense. And what if there were more people in here? They'd probably fight for that spot, and the others might have to sleep in the water with the bones and trash. The prison isn't well guarded though, just 1 guard. You'd have to open the gate with a lockpick and quickly make your escape. When you leave, you also have to get through the guard barracks, but it shouldn't be too hard either. I have to admit, I really like the cell with the water. It feels like a real punishment, and that's the kind of thing you expect from a prison. Now, let's take a look at the jail that really serves its purpose. The jail in Markarth is actually a mine where you're forced to mine your way out, and that definitely feels like a punishment. There are no beds or cells, just a dark cave filled with people paying off their debts. I don't see any food around, but some of these prisoners have been here for months or even years, so they must be getting something. Compared to other jails, this one has a lot more prisoners and it's an open space, which makes it a real threat. You'd probably want to get out of here fast before things get worse. Underground you can find a pickaxe to mine and escape, and that's the only way out as no one escapes Sidna Mine. There's no gate to open with a lockpick. As far as I know, the only way to escape Sidna Mine is during the Forsworn Conspiracy quest. If you've committed a crime, you're here to serve your time. It's actually pretty smart system. You're stuck mining or you'll never leave this place. The citizens probably don't have to pay taxes to keep prisoners fed. So, while a high crime rate is bad in many ways, this jail system could make the city richer. Let's check out the next jail, this time in Whiterun. The cell is pretty spacious, but there's a bottle lying on the floor and that definitely gives off a hopeful vibe. Is it a warning, or did the guards just not care enough to deal with it? And what happened happened to the poor guy? I don't see any food or a table to eat at, so it's possible he starved to death. There's only one bed here, and while it probably isn't the comfiest, it's not the worst. The space is huge though, so I'm wondering, is it meant for one person or could more fit here? If it's the second option, having just one bed could lead to some serious conflicts between the prisoners. This place has 3 more cells. The first one has mainly a bed and a bench. The second one has more furniture. A table with a plate, so maybe they actually give you food after all. There's also a bowl, probably for washing yourself, and 2 benches. I'm thinking the 2 benches might suggest this cell is for more than one person. Who needs 2 benches if it's only for one? The third cell looks pretty similar. There's even a chair and a table to eat at. It makes me wonder, does the quality of the cell depend on your crime? Did you commit something really bad? Then no food and your company is a dead body. Not as bad, you get the room with benches. And if you're from a rich family, maybe you get the most comfy cell all to yourself. Who knows? Beneath each cell, there's a tunnel that leads to the guard barracks. Doesn't seem super convenient though. The whole jail feels pretty spacious with 3 guards patrolling. There's also a space for them to sleep and eat. Escaping this place shouldn't be too hard. There are 2 options. Open the door with a lockpick and run past the guards. The hallways are wide enough to dodge them. Or use the tunnel under the cell and try to escape at night when the guards in the barracks are probably sleeping. So, this jail is quite comfortable for the prisoners. It doesn't feel like a real punishment for bad things you've done, especially if you compare it to the icy cave jail. Cold cities have really harsh jails, and the one in Windhelm is no exception. There are only 3 cells and they're so small. Here's just hay and leather to sleep on, no food, no table, nothing. You also have to stare at the questioning area, which must be pretty terrifying. Windhelm is a cold place, and if you look at the ground, it seems like the water is frozen, so it must be freezing in here. All the cells are the same, so no matter what you did or who you are, you're treated the same. It's a real punishment, maybe not as bad as Winterhold, but the conditions still look pretty brutal. 2 guards patrol the area, and upstairs I found 6 more, since the jail is connected to the guard barracks. Escaping from here would be pretty tough, as it'd be hard to avoid the guards in these narrow hallways. Plus, the barracks is full of guards, as it's not just a place for them to relax but also to sleep, so they're all here, especially at night. In Falkreath, the beds are upstairs, so downstairs you wouldn't have to face all the guards during an escape. I wouldn't want to end up in a jail here. The conditions are harsh and it really feels like a punishment. Now let's head to Morthal. The jail here has only 1 cell with 3 bedrolls and some food, mainly apples. There's also a broom, so it seems prisoners have some daily chores. The prison is guarded by just 1 guard, and what's strange is that his bed is placed right near the cell. It must be pretty odd sleeping here without any separation. It's almost like you're sleeping in the same room as the prisoners. Escaping might be a bit trickier than in Falkreath, as you'd first need to pick the lock on the cell, then get through the second locked door in the guard barracks while the guards are already chasing you. This jail doesn't really stand out. There's nothing particularly interesting about it, so let's move on to the next one. Solitude has pretty big jail. The cell I'm in has a bit of company, which shows that cells can be shared even if there's only 1 spot to sleep. Here, there's just hay on the ground with a skin on top. The conditions aren't bad, it's spacious enough and I can see some food. What's really interesting is a note that belonged to the man whose bones lie here. He probably died of disease based on what the note says, so it might mean that prisoners don't get the best care. I like that even in prison you can find a quest. I searched the bricks like the letter suggested and found a map. There are 6 more cells quite similar to this one. Almost each one has food and a place to sleep. 2 cells are a bit different. One has 2 spots to sleep and nothing else, which could mean it's meant to make the punishment worse. The other has a real bed, which is pretty exclusive for a prison. Maybe it's like I was thinking earlier, the cell you get depends on your crime or your social status. There's 1 cell, or rather a cage, hanging from the ceiling. This one's a real punishment, tight, not enough space, and made of metal, so sitting there must be really uncomfortable. After a few hours, everything probably starts aching. There's no privacy either, since everyone can see you from all sides. The jail is pretty huge with 2 floors. Each floor is guarded by just 1 guard, which is surprising because I'd expect more. Upstairs there are 2 spaces to relax and eat, as well as a storage room. There's also a room with 2 more cages, a body, and signs of some pretty unpleasant stuff. It must get pretty nasty in here if someone's trying to extract information. As for escaping, you can always use a lockpick, but it would be tough since there are lots of hallways, and even if you get past them, you'll end up in Castle Dower. If you manage to leave, you're still in a yard full of guards. But there's a secret passage that gives you an easier way out. You just have to be careful because when the wall falls, it's so loud that the guards can hear it and follow you. I kind of like the jail in Solitude. It's nice and huge, but it doesn't seem like that big of a punishment as it could be. Next, let's get to another cold place, Dawnstar. Unfortunately, the jail here doesn't really stand out compared to others. It has just 1 cell with 3 bedrolls and nothing else. No chair, no table, no food. 1 guard seems like enough since it's a very small jail and Dawnstar is a small city, so there probably isn't much crime here. The jail is simple and nothing really makes it memorable. The escape is similar to Falkreath. You have to pick the lock on the cell and make your way through the guard barracks. However, unlike in Mortal, the door in the barracks isn't locked. Probably one of the most dangerous cities in Skyrim is Riften. So what about the jail here? Let's find out. Okay, so I'm in the cell and it's actually pretty spacious. What's interesting is that there's a real bed here which only happens in 1 other jail and just 1 cell in Solitude. The food's here and there's even a lockpick on the table, so it's almost like the guards want me to escape. Kind of odd, right? The jail has 2 floors, each with 4 cells. The cells look pretty similar, though some have 2 beds. The conditions are actually pretty good. I found 3 prisoners here, which is the most I've seen in a while, just after Sidna Mine. 1 cell is particularly interesting. It almost looks like a Jarl's bedroom. Okay, maybe not as spacious, but look at that bed. It's definitely royal quality. The wardrobe, the table filled with fancy food, not just bread and cheese, and there's even a fork and knife, plus a nice carpet. And who's the guy in this fancy cell? C.B. Blackbriar. So, like I said before, if you're from a rich family, you get a better cell. As for the guards, I found 2. 1 upstairs by a cozy fireplace and the other downstairs with a not so comfy spot to relax. I also found a storage room with 2 cages hanging from the ceiling, so I guess they can be pretty harsh in Riften if they want. But normally, the jail seems pretty comfortable. And what about escaping? Well, you can always use a lockpick, but there's a better way. Like in Solitude, there's a secret passage here and it's pretty safe, just 1 rat to deal with. This way is even better than in Solitude though, because it leads you out of the city. In Solitude, you were still stuck in the city and had to find a way out somehow. I'm thinking about Riften. Does it have any homeless people around? Because let's be real, the jails here are basically an all-inclusive stay. Free food, a bed and no rain. So this prison isn't really much of a punishment. Maybe that's why there are 3 prisoners here, not just 1 or 0 like in other jails. So those are all the jails in Skyrim. A few of them really stand out, the Chill and Sidna Mine for sure. Those places can definitely make you think twice before committing a crime. Windhelm's jail also looks pretty harsh, and that cell with water in Falkreath? That's got to be rough. But the rest, honestly, they might be too comfortable, at least in my opinion. Thanks for watching.